Welcome back to the Leaning Government Podcast. This is episode 8, and today we're continuing our warehouse transformation series, part 2. In the last episode, I shared how we stabilized a struggling warehouse operation using lean principles, improving layouts, flow, and basic control of inventory and daily work. In this episode, I want to go deeper into what sustains those improvements. We will talk about naming conventions, why they matter more than most people realize, and how having a clear, standard way to name parts, locations, and inventory eliminates confusions, errors, and wasted time. I will also share how we used Cityworks software, not as a magic software solutions, but as a tool to support good process, visual management, and disciplined daily management of inventory. This is especially important in government environments where systems often exist, but standards don't. If you manage a warehouse, storeroom, fleet inventory, or any operation that relies on accurate inventory data, this episode will give you practical ideas you can apply right away. Let's get started. In the last episode, I spoke about 5S. And I said, like I said before, the foundation of Lean is 5S. So we need to organize our workspaces first, get rid of the noise, which is junk, unnecessary parts or tools, get them out of the way so we clearly know what we have. You can't improve if you don't know your starting point. And that is why last time I suggested the 5S. And I kind of start talking about how we started at the receiving dock at one end of the facility and continued through the warehouse in that one facility, and then across the parking lot as well. And later we'll talk about another warehouse that is associated with traffic and safety that was offsite as well. What I would like to talk about today is how we used Cityworks software to really electronically document location of every part, to document name of every part, the part number, to the bin location. So we knew where everything is located. And to be able to do that and to have full access to that kind of information, we have to have some type of a solution, a software, and we chose Cityworks for that purpose. The reason I chose this software, Cityworks, is because we already had Cityworks that we use for work order management system. And I began using that software that was sitting on the shelf in IT's department when I worked for parking services. I really wanted to use something to manage all my work orders, and I implemented that Cityworks software that we had and paid for it, but wasn't really used. I used that in parking services, and if you remember from previous episodes, you probably know how much success that brought us in parking services. But now we're not talking about parking, so we're talking about storeroom and warehouse operation. So the reason why I chose again Cityworks is because Cityworks work order management system had an add-on called Storeroom, Cityworks Storeroom. And nobody at that time, as far as I know, has used that at the city. And I wanted to be able to use that. And the reason for that was because we can associate that material to the work orders. And people completing work orders in this department could find material that they're looking for, material that they're using from their truck or from anywhere of their houses, and associate that to the work order electronically. And that's why I wanted to have one system, everything in one place. Before I start talking about that, I would still like to continue to discuss some of these 5S improvements that we've done with our team before we even started to utilizing Cityworks Storeroom. Number one, when we started organizing the warehouse, we brought people with institutional knowledge. We brought people that know these parts. And as I mentioned before, at City Grand Rapids, Michigan, we had three different departments that use this warehouse. Three different departments. They were located in one single facility, had one director and senior leadership leading these three different divisions. If you remember, sign shop, signals, and street lighting. So we brought those people, and as we were organizing in five fasting, if it was street lighting, we would bring street lighting team, some of the team members, to help us sort out. The other thing is that I needed their help is when we document everything to tell me really what's needed, how much is needed, and where it should be stored. So to do that, one of the things we have done, we have plugged everything into Cityworks software, all the parts as we were sorting out, we were documenting all these part numbers and giving them name, taking a picture, uploading that picture as well into Cityworks. And for the first time in history, we were assigning a location for that particular part. Why is that important? Well, we wanted to know exactly what we have, how much we have, and where it's located, and the cost, of course, of our inventory, which is very essential and important to run any business. So what we did, we documented everything in Cityworks as we were five-fasting these aisles and including the team members to help us out to sort what was trash, to trash it out, what was questionable item to put on the hold, maybe to ask the leaders what to do with it. Um, and then we had things in piles that we want to keep. They wanted to keep. So we had to find a home for that. And they helped us with that as well. There's something in supply chain management called ABC analysis. We're not going to go into details when we don't have time for that, but you should look into that. ABC analysis is very important to classify items as A, most critical, most important item, B, item is that we use once in a while, but not very often, and then C item, maybe we have ton of it, but the value is very low, or maybe we have some items that we don't use very often, so those are not that critical or expensive items in some cases. So there's A, B, and C. That's just quick overview what that kind of is. So we classified A items. A items is something that we need to have at the eye level when people come in. Those are the items that they use every single day. So we don't want to put those on the top shelf or at the bottom so people would have to stretch or get a ladder to grab that part, or they have to bend down to grab those parts that they use every single day. So those A items need to be at eye level. And that institutional knowledge came from our people, from our team members who use those parts in inventory every single day. C items, in some cases, those were washers, bolts, and nuts. So those items we could categorize as C items. We have thousands, millions of them, but they're not so critical. And we also position them at the location where they need to be. But B items is everything in between. So they are not inexpensive, used, but not that frequently. So those items could be either at the bottom shelf or on the upper shelf as well. C items also, I forgot to mention, is something that we can put on the top shelf where you require a forklift to get that down when it's needed in case of emergency, or you can get a ladder, to get those parts down. So those parts are not biggest movers in some cases. In some cases, they are. Like I told you, washers and nuts, they don't have a high value for it. They're not that critical, but they're important to have. So they need to be close to the other parts as well. So that was one thing. The other thing we wanted to do during the Five Fest is not to make things look cool, nice, and shiny, and we wanted to have a purpose during this sorting process. We wanted to have a purpose that serves our internal customer. So what did we do? So we told the customer we want to maximize that space that we have in the warehouse to our best ability so they can be more productive, so they can find things they need quickly, so they can grab parts that they need and get out and do the job that they need to do in no time. So that was the goal that we had. So when we explain to them how this works, then they start sharing some ideas with us. For example, at the end aisle of a rack, of like a shelving unit. We had like a wall. There was nothing there. When we explain to the people the importance of utilizing every space that we have, every inch of the warehouse, so we can consolidate inventory, we can put more inventory in under one roof. So eventually we can get rid of some of the unused space or repurpose that space for something that's more important for their operation. So somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody suggested to to hang some of the parts on the side of each aisle. And that's what we did. So we used 2x2s to build a frame. Then we put a pegboard, and then we bought those hooks where you can hang some items like belts, like some wires, like some parts that are packaged in a pack, and you can hang them like you can find at the local hardware store. So we utilized that space, unused space that was never used. We really repurposed that space and utilized that, and that was very helpful to us. But every time we had these 5S events, number one, we included people of knowledge so they can help us, tell us what's needed, what's not needed, what needs to be sold or sent to auction or whatever, um, and what can be scrapped. Number two, we needed to know how they use these items. Why is that important? Because when you build a product family, so when they come in to grab something to repair something out on the street, they grab, for example, a modem, then they need to grab some hardware, then they need to grab something associated with the modem, like cables and things. So we want to make sure that all these components that go together are close by. So one of the things we didn't want them to do, which was happening in the past, they'll grab something from one location, then they have to go on the other side of the warehouse, grab other parts from another location, which is waste of time. That is definitely a waste of time and definitely a waste of motion. So we wanted to eliminate that. And what you need to do when you work with your people is to explain that to your team. Explain to them, develop them, and make sure you provide that 5S and 8 deadly waste training so they understand what you are talking about. So you can't just start and do these events without developing and educating people. I have never, ever started a project like that I can remember without providing 5S and seeing waste, and introducing people to those 7 or 8 deadly wastes. So they have to understand before they even begin work on a project, before they even start participating in any of those improvement events. They need to know that. That is very, very important. Then, when they're educated, you want to go to the site, we call it Gamba, actual place of work. You want to run that project with them and then always ask them, okay, what waste is this? Look, I'm now taking these parts from this location to that location with this cart. What waste is that? Alan, that's a waste of transportation. That's right. Good job, John. Now we do another one. What waste is this? I'm bending, reaching for something, twisting my body. Waste of motion, Alan. Yes. Then I would ask him, hey, how much inventory do we need of item ABC? They said, Ellen, we probably need 12 for the whole year. Well, here we have 1,000. What waste is that? Waste of inventory. So as we are training and developing people and running these projects, we need to test their knowledge through these games, questioning them, playing with them. And if they make a mistake, no big deal, correct them. Where I've found out where people make most mistakes is when it comes to waste of motion and waste of transportation. That's where people get confused a lot. So you want to explain to them that difference. So now that we have things organized, one of the things I introduced to the team and said, hey, now that we're starting organizing these things, I know they have a part number. I know they have some description for the part number that I or they could not even understand what the description meant. XYZ 133, for example. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me or them. So those people over the years developed their own naming convention in their head, and they were passing down this tribal knowledge to other coworkers. But we could not sustain that. So we needed to call everything a certain way. And the best way to call something is what the supplier is calling it. And we started to look into supplier naming convention. So we have apple to apple if possible. But in some cases, if it was a weird description from the supplier, not that didn't happen very often, but we did have some of those cases. Then our team named that part using their thoughts and whatever they have called it in the past, and that became the part name. So we started, I introduced to them naming convention. We started to have a naming convention. So how are we gonna identify these parts, part number, and how is the naming convention gonna work? Is it gonna be orange, comma, 3/4 inch, comma, conduit, for example? Or is it gonna be a conduit, comma, orange, comma, three quarter inch conduit or whatever? So whatever we decided, we kept that. We spend time talking about it because we want to make sure when we start this naming convention, we cannot change it again. Why? Because we're going to put a lot of time and effort into it. So we wanted to make sure that's what's most logical that we use. We want to see what is the standard out there. People that are professional in distribution centers and warehouse management. Speaking of that, prior to all this work that I just told you, I went to the first distribution center in the United States of America, Gordon Food Center in Michigan. If you're not familiar with distribution centers, it all started in Grand Rapids, Michigan with Gordon Food Services. At least that's what I was told. So I went to that distribution center to learn their philosophy, to learn how they work, to learn how they do their naming conventions, how they create product families. So I did go there for a tour, and they were kind enough to give me a tour of their facility and show me how everything works in their environment. So they gave me some ideas. It's good always to benchmark, to see people that do better than you certain things so you can learn from them. I'm not saying we need to copy them. I never copied anyone, but they gave me some ideas. They gave me some hints on standards like naming convention, for example. Okay, so we created a naming convention. We started a naming convention. Now we want to document this somewhere. In the past, this department was using Access Database. The name of the software, it's a Microsoft Access Database. For those of you that are younger, you probably don't remember that. It was a pretty good database. But that's what they used, but it wasn't really updated. Nobody was in charge of it. So it was useless to the team members because you can't pull nothing out of it. So what we decided to do, I introduced to them Cityworks Storeroom. I told them that I used Cityworks for work order management system. And that's something my manager and I introduced to the director of traffic and safety. And he started utilizing Cityworks as well, or began using it for work order management system. So he already introduced that to his team. They started slowly using it before we started with the Cityworks Storeroom. Now, when I started with Cityworks Storeroom, introducing that to them, I told them how this will benefit them because Storeroom is part of Cityworks. It's just an add-on. So when they look into work order and they're looking for a part, they'll be able to filter inside a work order and attach that part from Storeroom to the work order without even leaving that page. And that's why we wanted to have one software, not multiple softwares, one for managing inventory, one for work order purposes. That's a waste again. And that's another thing that I introduced to my manager and other directors when I introduced Cityworks. I said, we need to standardize on one software. I'll speak later about a department that was using already Maxim. They were using like 1% of capabilities of Maxim, but they were using. And I think that department was the best one when it comes to initially documenting and managing inventory inside a software. They did a pretty good job. But like I said, they didn't use all the functionalities. They didn't use supply chain management principles. They just used the basics, what do we have, where it is, how much does it cost? Things like that. But where it was more advanced, and even that department, we switched to Cityworks. We switched the entire city to Cityworks. Cityworks for work order management system and for storeroom. There was only one department that remained on Maxima to use for their work order management system, and that's a long story. But the rest of the city, 98% of the city used Cityworks in the end, and it will work really good for linear assets and later vertical assets as well. And it really did a great job because we had now Cityworks for work orders, Cityworks for storeroom for managing inventory. So we start plugging that in. So remember how I said before, we hired some interns to do that. So for the first time now, as we're going through the warehouse, we are really uploading a picture of every part. So it's easy for you to see out in the field. If you're not really familiar with the description, you can pull up the picture right on your laptop out in the field or a tablet and see what that is. So that's one thing. So we had a naming convention. So every part, imagine you have washers. So all these 30 different washers starts with washers, comma, then the size, comma, and then if there's a color, but in washers, there's not a color. But for other parts, we used colors. So now we had this nice naming convention. Now we had part numbers. The other important thing is we knew exactly where everything's located. Not only we 5S this warehouse and other locations at that site, we also 5S their trucks. We also gave a storeroom to a truck. So every truck had its own storeroom. So if you're driving a truck down the road and you need to fix something and you're taking this part from your truck, you're taking this part. So on your work order, you're going to select your truck as a storeroom. And then you're going to say, I took this part, this mouse from my truck inventory, not from the warehouse. Why? Well, that has been done so we know exactly what we have, how much we have, money wise too, where it's located at any given time. We wanted to create 100% transparency so we know where everything is. Number two, we want to make sure that we have these trigger points. So if the truck is running low on inventory, our storekeepers were able to see that report will pop up and said, this just hit the minimum requirement. This truck needs to be restocked with this particular item. So our folks, and that's another story, I'm going to tell you more about that later. But just to give you an idea, what we did is had tubs and prepared that inventory to bring it to the max level on that truck and labeled it and had it at a certain location, waiting for that employee to come to the storeroom, grab it, and upload his or her inventories on the truck with the new inventory. So we wanted to make sure there's no stockouts on the trucks with a critical inventory that they carry with them. Now they don't carry everything; it's impossible. But I'm talking about a critical that they use every single day. They should never run out, and that was the goal. We don't want you to run out. And in future episodes, we'll talk more about it. That's typically what happened. The other thing that helped us during the audits, when we did conducted these monthly and then final annual audit, um, we could tell what's where, and then we could quickly count. So we would keep all these employees and their trucks in the line and say, hey, let's spend half hour and go through your trucks and just do a quick monthly audit check and make sure what the system shows is what you really have. And then if there's any discrepancy, they will note that on a piece of paper, bring it to our office, and we would update those numbers and write off any parts that are no longer there for whatever reason. Also, we would look for root causes to find out if it's a huge discrepancy. We had this discrepancy report where we look to find why that discrepancy happened. So Cityworks is a great software in the United States we use, and I know they use in other countries as well. Um, for local government. They don't sell that software as far as I know, at least at that time, to private sector. So that's why I'm speaking to you in government. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not saying it's the best in the world, but what I'm saying is really you need to standardize on a software. What I would not recommend to you as a lean practitioner, somebody who served as inventory and asset manager for over 10 years for the city of Grand Rapids in Michigan, is it's a lot easier to manage one system, one software than others. The other reason I'm saying that is whatever software you select, and you can find out from your consultants or find out on your own what's best for you, is you should go with one software, develop your people, develop yourself, get familiarized with that software, and start owning it. What I mean owning it, start understanding how the software functions and works so you can make necessary updates. You can find mistakes. You can find glitches and fix it yourself. In future episodes, I would like to spend some time about utilizing consultants in government. And I know some of you may have a bad taste, some of you may have a good taste. In most cases, a bad taste when you say consultant. But in lean, we don't look nothing negative. We always look from the point of benefits. How can we benefit, even in this case, from consultants? So initially, to get a consultant to teach you how to use the software, to show you all the functionalities, to help you establish that software, get off the ground, I would say it's beneficial. Is it costly? Yes, it is. Of course, it is. But you need to have somebody show you if you don't have that knowledge. And I was fortunate enough to work with this gentleman, Peter Godfrey. He was one of the best consultants I ever worked with. I don't know if he's going to listen to this episode, but I really want to mention his name. Why Peter Godfrey was one of the best consultants to me. And I worked with so many consultants. I mean, many consultants. And there are other great consultants, don't get me wrong. But to me, he was one of the best ones. And the reason for that is he didn't come to me and the city to sell a product, get his check and then leave. Like in some cases, we have experience with some other consultants in different areas. What he really did, I remember when he came, first it was funny, and that's nice to have with consultants. But the other thing he did with us is he said, "What is your need? What do you need?" And then when we explained to them, initially it was work order system. When I worked for parking, that's when I really met him. And then he said, "So what do you want with this system?" And I explained to him. And then he developed a plan for us, what the system could do, capabilities, and how we should set it up. But then also I told Peter Godfrey, I said, "Hey, listen, eventually I want to know how the system works. Eventually I want to take over this from you and your team. And we want to build our own group, Cityworks IT group, that can take over and do these quick fixes, update, and then spread this throughout the city. So we want to be able to start from from A through Z when it comes to implementation of the software." He said, "That's not a problem." He said, "I'm here to provide any help you need as a customer. If you want us to measure, I'm here for you. If you want me to teach you or us to teach you how to use this, then we're going to do that as well." And he kept his promise. So he really, truly developed us. He truly was there for us when we needed him. And then we started later, we're going to talk in future episodes, taking that software to other departments for the work order management system. So we knew how to implement it because he taught us how to do it. And then bigger problems, issues we had, we always went back to him and his team, to the experts, because we can't know everything. But the basics, that was the important thing for me and my team, is to understand the basics. Please teach us the basics. We don't call you for every little thing. And he did a great job with that. And same thing with storeroom. So I learned everything about the software storeroom, but did not provide everything I needed. I wanted to calculate minimum order quantity, reorder points. So you need min max for that. And I wanted to calculate the economic order quantity. So if you don't know what that is, you should probably look into that. Apex is a great organization that can teach you and give you courses, and you can get certificate. I have gone through their certification program, a great organization. Not that I'm advertising them. I don't know anyone else better than them. Maybe there is someone, but I use them and they helped me a lot. So I had lean, and from Apex, I had all this knowledge that I didn't have before when it comes to inventory management. And they taught me a lot going through their classes. I learned how to calculate economic order quantities and how important that is. So you don't want to have too much of something and then lose that later. Maybe something with expiration date, or you don't want to have too little. Or if something has a long lead time, you have to have a little bit more than what we probably want to have on the shelf because you need to protect yourself. I mean, I don't want to go into details of that, but that's something that we looked into at min max, reorder point, economic order quantity. We want to calculate, and Storeroom wasn't capable of that. Storeroom was really basic. And what I found out from the developer who created the storeroom, who worked for that organization, he told me, "Alan, listen, we had a customer who was interested in that. Our focus was really not into developing a really good inventory management system at that time. Our focus was 100% on work order management system for linear assets at that time." But then after I start going to the conferences and speaking in their conferences and telling them, "Hey, here's the software that comes add on with your software, and here's how I repurposed it. It does not give me everything I need to run inventory management system the way I wanted. So I had to improvise it and change it and put some codes in my IT. I wasn't that knowledgeable. So I would give my IT formulas and say, "Hey, listen, here are the formulas. I need you to put that in." And then he We would repurpose some of the fields in storeroom, and then he would recalculate everything like economic quantity, and then he would spit it out in our report. So the developer of storeroom got called into the room as I was presenting and said, "You should listen to this guy." And it was in Salt Lake City. So he came in. I got to know that gentleman. And that's another thing that I really love. That organization was so nice and kind to us. That developer, we built a relationship as a customer or customer and the developers of the software, where later he has improved the software and asked me for all my inputs. And he used lots of my inputs into design of the new software. And I showed him formulas and verified his formulas. And he gave me a dev environment where I could test the storeroom before anybody else could. Um, so that was another good thing as a customer, working directly with the developer. So we work directly with the consultants. Consultant connected us with the developers, where we went later and presented every year for years, things we have done and improved and how we utilize their software, which is a really was beneficial because I learned from others as well a lot how the software can bring success to an organization. But then also we built this relationship, customer and developer, and they helped us deliver the product that we really needed. And later on, I'm going to go more into that. So that's all I had for today. But what I want to leave you with is the following. As we close out episode 8, here's the key takeaway. Software does not fix broken systems or broken process. Standards do. So you got to create standards like naming convention. Naming conventions, clear locations, and disciplined daily managements are what makes system like Cityworks actually work. When everyone speaks the same language, inventory becomes visible, errors drop, and the warehouse shifts from constant firefighting to a predictable flow. In the next episode of this series, we will go even further into long-term standardization, leadership behaviors, and how these warehouse improvements translated into real cost savings. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a colleague. Subscribe to Lean in Government podcast and follow Lean in Government for more real world public sector improvement stories. You can follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Thank you for listening. And remember, Lean is not about working harder. It's about creating systems that make it easier to do the right things. Until next time, have a great day.